And now to discuss this, we are joined by Justice Ojienoh, a lawyer and public affairs analyst. Now, Justice, good to have you here in the studio with us. It's been 4 years since the protest, October 2020. Now, would like to know exactly why it was absolutely necessary, first of all, to have such an event to commemorate the occasion. Why is it such an important event in Nigeria's history?
It is the least that the protesters or the persons who went to commemorate it could have done, because a number of lives were lost. First, it was entrapped in the arena of rumor. The government, which had the instrumentality of law enforcement that caused the death, denied it. But later, they had to own up to it because of the public outcry that followed, both local and international, and the fact that a panel of inquiry, a tribunal of inquiry was actually instituted that found that, in fact, persons were killed on the 20th of October 2020, and not just a local one. We also had the ECOWAS court also come up to say that, in fact and indeed, a number of infractions actually occurred during that period. So the least that people could do was to lay a wreath, which was what they went to do yesterday. But unfortunately, they were harassed, arrested, but even though they were eventually released after interventions.
Harassed, arrested, and eventually released. However, now this took place 4 years ago to protest the actions of police against regular civilians. Has anything changed if we look at what happened 4 years ago and what happened yesterday?
Significantly, not much. Even though, with my experience, because I was also on ground yesterday with the protesters, and we were part of the lawyers that talked to the police to ensure that they were eventually released. What we saw, at least yesterday, was that, at least when it comes to the upper echelon of the police force, the commissioner was quite professional in the way he addressed us and in the way he ensured that, yes, the rights of protesters were eventually, especially the right to freedom of the liberty of their persons, the fact that they were released immediately when we made demands of them. But as for their members, the members within their ranks, they were the ones that perpetuated the injustice that occurred to the protesters. It was quite gory. I wish I can go into individual details in this news bulletin, but it's unfortunate that happened. When we confronted, especially the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Lanre Ishola, he told us that he is going to isolate those officers and deal with them accordingly, and that it won't be shrouded in secrecy, that we will be made aware of the disciplinary measures that will be taken against such officers, and we are waiting with bated breath that will actually and eventually happen. And if it doesn't happen we also have avenues to use to escalate the matter.
There were numerous socioeconomic factors that led to the protest in the first place from 4 years ago. And we've also had protests that have followed that since End Bad Governance was just a couple of months ago. Has anything changed, whether for better or for worse, regarding these factors that have caused the rate of expression when it comes to dissent?
Not significant. Nothing much has changed. I feel that as much as possible, yes, we had a situation where the police officers were really, really terrorists, especially NSAS at the time 4 years ago. Yes, there is some improvement. Yes, we may not have empirical facts as to how Nigerians, especially young Nigerians, are being maltreated in the hands of the police. But we know that maybe it's maybe it's not as bad as it was 4 years ago. But again, the Nigerian police officers are still maltreating Nigerians. They may just not be as organized as they were with the NSAS, but generally, the SARS operatives that are dissolved into the general Nigerian police force, they are still largely dealing and maltreating young Nigerians. And we will keep crying that the police still has a lot to do. Yes, it may be that it was very, very terrible at the time, but now we are not also saying that they don't have much to do. We have to keep being on the neck of the authorities of the Nigerian police force to ensure that improvements will keep being recorded when it comes to the rights and the dignity of the average Nigerian, to their person and to the liberty of their person.
So the SARS instance, now how has it affected the culture of expression when it comes to dissent? Has it emboldened younger people to continue to protest and ask for their rights? Or in the case of end bad governance, do we think that it has instead done the opposite?
I think it has done the opposite, if we have to be frontal and frank. A lot of Nigerians now do not feel that they have, especially young Nigerians, do not feel the courage that is required to be able to come out on the street. The numbers don't lie. The facts are there. The number of Nigerians that thronged out during the NSAS protest did not throng out this period. But we know that strategies were changed. Rather than coming out on the street, of course, they are using some other media to be able to express their disgust at the Nigerian government. And it's also a shame on the Nigerian government that if we have a situation where young Nigerians are scared to come out, it is not to the credit of the Nigerian government. It is a fact that there is serious evidence of oppression of the Nigerian youth. That is why a number of them are not coming out. And I must also take this opportunity to salute the courage of the ones that know that, yes, if they come out, they will be dealt with in the manner which they were dealt with yesterday. And in spite and despite, still exercise the courage to come out on behalf of the other Nigerians who are now in a situation of despair and a situation of lack of courage to come out. We encourage that no matter what, because of the disposition of especially the high echelon of the Nigerian police in Lagos State. I operated with the last commissioner too. This commissioner is about 1 month in office. We had their audience and we ensured that they give us guarantees that anybody who is arrested will be released. And that was exactly what happened during the end bad governance protest in August and this time too in October. With the guarantees of the ones who are in the higher offices, we think that we'll be able to ensure that the average young Nigerian exercises their right to protest without any let or hindrance. But as for the ones who have been molested, we will keep saying to the Nigerian police, especially the commissioner, to ensure that they are isolated and excised from the system, either by outrightly removing them from the Nigerian police force or exercising serious disciplinary measures against them so that the right to enjoyment of protests by the average Nigerian should be maximized rather than stifled.
I'm going to piggyback off of something that you said from earlier when you talked about strategies changing when it comes to how the protesters have activated these other protests. We also see a situation where it's a different governance, and we saw a change in strategy as well when it came to the use of police. Even if, however, that the SARS unit has been disbanded, there was still a major presence, a major use of the police or that apparatus when it came to the previous protests from a couple of months ago. How has this affected the dynamic, the change of strategy from the government itself?
Seriously, I think it has seriously affected the dynamics. I must be frontal to tell you that with what we've seen on the streets, there is a major and outsized display of force on the side of this government, especially in Lagos State. The presence of the Nigerian police in their numbers is highly uncalled for. And it is very, very important to note that with this show of force, excessive show of force, it is enough to discourage Nigerians who don't have as much courage as the ones who were defiant to the point of saying that no matter the number of tanks you roll out, no matter the number of officers you display on the streets, we will still come out. And of course, with their coming out, we know as lawyers to them that the least that we can do is speak the gauntlet of the likes of Mr. Ganifa, senior advocate of Nigeria, who defied the use of force by the governments of the time and ensure that some of the rights that we take for granted, not just as lawyers, but as average Nigerians, that the rights that we take for granted, he ensured that he held the government to account to ensure that those rights were put in place for us. For example, the FREP rules, the Fundamental Rights Enforcement Procedural Rules, was almost a one-man battle by the great Ganifa. But for him, it would have been very, very difficult for the average Nigerian to be able to approach the courts to be able to ask for their rights. But because of what this great martyr has actually done, we as Nigerians, there are a lot of rights that we enjoy. There are a lot of cases that we cite in court that because he has a fighting spirit that defies the use of force of the government of the day, that's why we can enjoy such rights. And I also encourage Nigerians that as lawyers, we will also contribute the little that we can contribute, but they too should defy, no matter what the government does. We are enmeshed with the right to protest as enshrined in sections 39, 40, and 41 of our Constitution, and as abundantly declared in the cases in court, especially the case of ANPP and IGP, where the court expressly said that, yes, the average Nigerian has a right to protest, and it is the job of the police to ensure that they are protected while they are protesting.
Well, Justice Ojienoh, I want to say thank you very much for coming on the news this morning, or rather this evening. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.